2 o'clock, perfect. Let's start. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Irina Babrova. I am Chief Operating Officer here at Pitbull Tax, and I'm glad you joined us today for this complimentary webinar on new rules on first-time penalty abatement. I'm here with our panelist, William Beiswenger, our Director of Sales, and Justin Gruber, our Senior Sales Representative. They will be helping me answering your questions. So if we have time at the end, I will answer some of your questions live. And let's start with some housekeeping. So everybody should get presentation slides in the chat window. So Will and Justin, they're going to share the slides from time to time for those of you who joined a little bit later. And these are the materials. So please also look for the link for the slides because some of you will be joining on mobile devices. Again, I'll repeat that this webinar is overbooked, so we'll have full house. And for that reason, we only allow you to log in from one device, either mobile or PC or Mac. So try not to log in from multiple devices. This webinar is qualified for 1 CE and 1 CPE credit. So we are a continuing education provider licensed by IRS and NASBA. So if you are enrolled agent or CPA, you will get 1 credit reported. During registration, we asked all EAs to submit your PT number. If you haven't done so, please try to do it in the chat message here, and it will be recorded so we can see later your PTIN. For CPAs, we don't need your PTIN number. And certificates will be issued within next week after we end this webinar. So you will get them by email. So only enrolled agents and CPA should expect certificates, okay? And in order to get the credit, you need to be here for the entire hour, answer at least 3 polls out of 4 that we're going to launch, and also answer mandatory survey question at the end, just 1 question when we end the webinar. And I think everybody should hear me. Some of you who don't, please check your settings, and let's dive into FTA. So what are the learning objectives for today's webinar? So by the end of the webinar, we should know what types of penalties are subject to first-time abatement. We will learn the new criteria for FTA, which were updated just a couple of months ago on March 29th of 2023. We can identify how many times FTAs can be granted in a lifetime of a taxpayer. We will learn how to read FTA eligibility reports generated in Pitbull Tax software. We will identify automatic penalty relief on failure to file penalties for 2019 and 2020. We will learn about impact of refund statute of expiration on first-time abatement. And I'll teach you how to identify certain FTA strategies. And finally, how to request FTA waiver. And of course, we are going to talk at the end how you can make money with first-time abatement. Of course, everybody is interested in that. And this is what we're going to cover in this webinar. So first-time abatement. Download the slides because this section is very important. It's like your penalty handbook for FTA. IRM 20.1.1.3.3.2.1. Yes, for those of you who are used to reading IRM, you know this numbering. And it has been updated on March 29, 2023, just a little bit more than 2 months ago. So it's very fresh and there are some new rules. In my opinion, the IRS liberated significantly the compliance rules. And for that reason, a lot more taxpayers will be eligible for FTA right now. This administrative waiver has been implemented in 2001 for tax period with ending dates after December 31, 2000. That means for individual tax returns, you can get first-time penalty abatement on years 2001 and later. So you cannot do FTA for 1990 or 1987 and so on and so forth. So the Internal Revenue Service provides administrative relief from the following 3 penalties. Failure to file penalty under Internal Revenue Code 6651A1, 6698A1 in regards to partnership returns, and Internal Revenue Code 6699A1 for S corporations. The relief is provided also for failure to pay FTP penalty under Internal Revenue Code 6651A2 and 6651A3. And the third types of penalties is failure to deposit under IRC 6656. So these 3 types of penalties can be abated under the first time abate administrative waiver. You cannot do FTA on accuracy-related penalties or estimated tax penalties or any other types of penalties, with some exceptions, which I'm going to talk about later. But these are the 3 main penalties where you can get FTA. Okay, well, let's launch the polling question number 1. And we go from there. You will have 1 minute to answer polling question number 1. I don't see it launched. Will? Okay, perfect. What is your current designation? This is an important question because we need to know if you're a CPA or enrolled agent for getting your C and CPA credits. So please answer. If you have multiple designations, you can check multiple check boxes. Okay, that must be very, very easy question. So far, 94% participated, 95%, very good. Okay, few more seconds, and we'll close this question. Okay, well, let's stop the polling question. So 95% participated, so let's share results. We have 60% of enrolled agents, 29% of CPAs, 8% of tax attorneys, 6% tax preparers, 1% paralegals, 2% admins, and non-designated 1%. Okay, let's, I'll share results for a little bit, and we stopped sharing. Okay, perfect. Let's continue with presentation. So I told you that only 3 types of penalties can be FTA'd, but there are 2 exceptions. Exception number 1, Form 5471 penalties. For those of you who prepare information returns of U.S. persons in with interest in foreign corporations, you know that you prepare Form 5471. So under Internal Revenue Manual 20.1.9.3.53b, the FTA penalty does not apply to event-based filing requirements, such as Form 5471. However, if failure to file penalty for Form 1120 or 1065 was abated under FTA provisions or would have been eligible for FTA, but FTA penalty wasn't assessed because there was a zero tax due, or it was a fully paid return, then FTF penalty for Form 5471 may be abated under FTA provisions, provided that they meet the following criteria. The taxpayer had no penalties for 5471 in the 3 prior periods, and the related Form 1120 or Form 1065 was not filed late in the last 3 periods. So only these 2 points you have to remember. So these penalties, 5471, are only for those cases when it's filed in conjunction with Form 1120 or Form 1065. So if 1120 or 1065 was FTA'd or would be eligible for FTA for failure to file penalties, then 5471 can be abated too. And when we are talking about 5471s, you know the penalties are very, very steep. They start at $10,000 and can go much, much higher. So being able to FTA 5471 penalties is a big, big plus. Remember, this provision is only covering 5471 failure to file penalty when it's filed in conjunction with Form 1120 and 1065. When it's filed in conjunction with 1040, this is not applicable. So I have a lot of 1040 clients where we file 5471s. So for them, this provision will not work. So it's only when 5471 is filed in conjunction with 1120 or 1065. Okay, and the second exception is for Form 5472 penalties. So again, it's information return for foreign corporations who have US-based based income, and for US corporations with foreign interest. So under the IRM 20.1.9.5.5.3b, you can also do 5472 failure to file penalty abated under FTA provisions, very similar to the previous exception, and the criteria are identical. So you shouldn't have, well, the taxpayer shouldn't have 5472 penalties in the prior 3 periods, and the related Form 1120 was not filed late in the 3 prior periods. So remember those exceptions, because very often people miss it. And we know very well that FTA can be done on FTA, FTF, FTP, and FTD, but sometimes we forget about 5471 and 5472 penalties. So let's talk about the new rules. What are the criteria for every other forms? So the following FTA waiver criteria applies to all taxpayers when determining if FTA relief may be granted. And the criterion number 1 is the taxpayer has filed the same return as a penalized return for the 3 years preceding the penalized tax period, unless there is no filing requirement. And or the tax modules for the same return do not have return delinquency issues. These are usually non-filer delinquency issues. So This is what I call liberation. If you remember, the prior to March 29 of this year, the FTA rules on compliance were the last 6 years of returns should have been filed by the taxpayer. So if we are in 2023 right now, the returns for 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, and 17 should have been filed. And if we're in May 30 of 2023 and 2022 is still not filed, but we filed extension, that was qualifiers. Well, they crossed out that compliance requirement totally. So there is no more such requirement. So all we have to look at the 3 prior years. So if penalized period is 2020, for example, then 2019, 18, and 17 must be filed, or they didn't have to file because the income was too low, for example, or they didn't have any income. So only 3 prior periods. So just this compliance change will show much more qualifications for FTA for your clients. So this is criterion number 1. Number 2. So the 3 prior years before penalized year were filed and processed and do not have any type of unreversed penalties except estimated tax penalty. And no notice was issued showing the assessed penalty or penalties. And you notice here, I highlighted in red redacted portion. You know, if you are frequently reading Internal Revenue Manual, you'll see this a lot. So they redact something that is not for public consumption. They don't want us to see it. But I know for a fact what's written here. It says greater than $1. So penalties of less than $1 up to 99 cents will not disqualify this period from first-time abatement. So only penalties of $1 or more or greater will disqualify from FTA. So this is rule number 2. So the 3 prior years should have no penalties except for estimated tax penalty of $1 or greater. Okay. And the third main rule is that there shouldn't be any manually suppressed or reversed penalties with penalty reason code PRC 018, which is first-time abatement where a reasonable cause assistant was not used, PRC 020, FTA where RCA was used, and 021, tolerance used for failure to deposit penalties. So basically, if you have abated penalties in the past 3 years for this client, and they were abated under first-time abatement code, then you won't have first-time abatement eligibility for the penalized year. I'm going to show you examples later. So, for example, again, if we are working and trying to abate 2020 penalties, but in, let's say, 2019, we had FTA granted and abated. In that case, you cannot do FTA on 2020 because it was reversed penalty under first-time abatement module. So this rule is programmed in our transcript reports. I'm going to show you later how it works. And it's very, very important because very often people do FTA and they do not think of what will be the consequences? The consequences, so next year you won't be able to do it. But anyway, your period will probably be excluded from qualification anyway because of the presence of penalties. But abatement of penalties under FTA prohibits abatement on FTA for the penalized period. When we see the reports, it will be much more intuitive for you to understand this point. So also, Internal Revenue Manual says that if you have different filing status in the 3-year look-back period, then FTA criteria must be met for both primary and secondary taxpayer. So let me give you an example. If the filing status of the return on the penalized period is merit filing joint, and the required returns in the preceding 3 years were not filed under the same primary Social Security and with the same filing status and same primary and secondary Social Security numbers, FTA criteria for both Social Security numbers must be met. So let's say your clients just got married in 2022 and they have penalties and you are trying to abate them. So you need to look not only on your taxpayer, the primary Social Security number taxpayer, but let's say they filed single for the 3 prior years. So we need to see if those returns when he filed or she filed single, they meet the FTA criteria, the same, no penalties in the prior 3 years, they filed returns in the prior 3 years, and there was no FTA abatement. But we also need to check the spouse. And you need to check if spouse doesn't have penalties in the 3 prior years when filing, or she filed all the returns and she doesn't have FTA abatement on the 3 prior years. So this is nothing new. It was always there, but this time when we have updated our FTA eligibility reports in Pitbull Tax software, we have done some magic. So now when the software determines that the filing status is merit filing joint for the penalized year when you're trying to determine eligibility for FTA. And if you have power of attorney or tax information authorization for the spouse, we will also check your client's spouse's transcripts and see if she is or he is eligible for FTA. And we're gonna tell you, no, not eligible due to spouse's non-compliance, for example. Or if you're you do not have 2848 or 8821 for your client's spouse, then we will display you a red footnote saying that we cannot check eligibility because you do not have power of attorney or 8821 for the spouse. So this will be on you. So you will either have to obtain the power or check manually if she or he would be qualified. So remember, when statuses are different, you have to check both primary and secondary taxpayer. They have to have clear 3-year compliance history, no penalties, file returns, and no FTA abatements. Another example, if the filing status on the return on the penalized period is other than merit filing joint, and the taxpayer filed or was required to file as a secondary taxpayer during the preceding 3 years, FTA criteria must be met for the returns on which the taxpayer was reported or was required to report it as a secondary taxpayer. So it doesn't matter where he was. Maybe he was married to another person and he was a secondary taxpayer on that return. So both primary and secondary taxpayers will be checked for compliance. Okay. So now let's launch polling question number 2. Will, please. Can FTF penalties on Form 5471 be abated under FTA waiver? Yes, no, very simple. Okay, few seconds. Failure to deposit penalties related to estimated taxes or payroll taxes. It's related to payroll taxes, so 941s. Okay, 100% answered. Let's end this poll. 85% of you answered yes. 15% of you probably have not been here in the last 10 minutes when I talked about it. So yes, FTF penalties can be abated under FTA waiver with certain exceptions. So read the materials after if you still think it's no. Trust me, it doesn't matter whether you answered correct or not. If you answer the question, it will go towards your presence check. Let's move on, stop sharing. And now let's talk about presence of failure to deposit waivers. A total of 4 or more failure to deposit penalty waiver codes present in the taxpayer's 3-year penalty lookback period will disqualify the taxpayer from FTA. So, FTD penalty is charged for failure to deposit payroll taxes on Form 941, 944, and when we look at the 3-year look-back period, it's 3 years, not 3 quarters, because 941 is a quarterly return. So we are looking not at the 3 prior periods of filed, but we are looking at the 3 prior years. So we get 12 different 941s. They needed to be free of penalties, filed on time, not on time, necessarily filed. Yes, they don't file on time usually. And they shouldn't have any FTA abatements in the 3 prior years. So, but if FTT penalty was abated more than 4 times, and they have waiver code 24 when it's waived due to change in a deposit frequency, and waiver code 25 set when FTD penalty is waived per IRM 20.1.4.3 restrictions on assessments criteria. Don't try to look that IRM section because it is completely redacted. So very, very private information. So presence of 4 or more FTD waivers in the taxpayer's 3-year penalty look-back period will disqualify you from FTA. So how many times you can request first-time abatement for a single taxpayer in their lifetime? This is one of the most confusing matters that I hear all the time. And the name of this administrative waiver is confusing. So first-time abatement, and people say, well, first time, second time, you cannot get abatement. Well, it's wrong. The IRS named it incorrectly, probably. So first-time abatement can be done basically every 4th year, provided that all FTA waiver criteria are met during the 3-year look-back period for the penalized tax period. So if we have a taxpayer who files returns timely, no penalties, they pay on time, and they on the fourth year, they, let's say, filed late and paid late and they have penalties, you can abate them. Then the next 3 years, again, good compliance, good payment compliance, filing compliance, again, no penalties. On the next fourth year, again, if they have penalty, it can be abated under FTA. So basically, multiple times you can get the first-time abatement penalty service for one taxpayer. And you don't need to believe me, believe to this Office of Chief Counsel Memorandum dated September 28, 2017, which says that it is possible for the same taxpayer to receive multiple first-time abatements because the policy requires only a 3-year compliance history. So yes, absolutely, you can get FTA on multiple times for the same taxpayer. Okay. So now let's look at first-time penalty abatement eligibility reports generated in Pitbull Tax software. I hope many of you use our IRS transcript delivery feature, and it has this report, first-time penalty abatement eligibility report. So let's see how to read it. I highlighted to you 2013 for individual taxpayer. The return was filed. The status is merit filing joint. They have 33,400 in assessed tax. There are no failure to file penalties. There is a failure to pay penalty of more than 5,000 and other penalties of $190. So because the 3-year look back period is clear, they filed returns and there are no penalties whatsoever on the 3 prior years, this year will be eligible for FTA and potential abatement will be $5,203.46. Other penalties of $190 will not be abated because they are not FTF, FTP, or FTD penalties. So other penalties like accuracy-related penalties, estimated tax penalties, sometimes fraud penalties, those will not be abated. Okay. Next. So in this particular report, I have 2 different eligibilities. And for 2009, we see that total FTF and FTP penalties are over $18,000. And the result says may be eligible after filing compliance. So if you see that 2006, 7, and 8 have no, so return was not filed. So once taxpayer files those returns, then you can get FTA on 2009. Or you may check, maybe they were not required to file and maybe they didn't have income. So you need to check this. And the same for 2016, yes, so maybe eligible after filing compliance, but the returns were not filed. So we don't even know, like when it's dash in the return filed column, that means the transcript is completely empty. It doesn't even have a transaction code, tax return was not filed. So when it is says so, we says no. But when the transcript is completely empty, we will put dash in here. So we do not know. Maybe they were not required to file. So we don't know. So that's why maybe eligible after filing compliance is shown right here. And when you see this status other than eligible, and there is a footnote underneath, which gives you explanation what is a problem, why it is maybe eligible. So you need to look that the 3 prior periods must be filed. Okay. Next is example where for 2018 return, we have may be eligible with two asterisks after the code, after the status. So why is that? You see in 2017, abated penalties of $863.25 present. And remember, I told you that if the penalties were abated under FTA waiver, then this period will be disqualified. However, if these penalties were, let's say, abated under reasonable cause, then you should be getting abatement on the 2018. And again, there is a footnote right here. So unfortunately, we cannot decipher from account transcripts what is the penalty reason code, what penalty reason code was used for that particular abatement. They don't post it on ACC transcripts. The only way to find out if, for example, it's a new client and you didn't abate those penalties, it's to call the IRS and inquire. Just ask like, oh, I would like to get first-time penalty abatement on this one. Or if you don't have engagement letter yet, just ask what under what PRC the penalty for 2017 was abated. And after that, you should decide whether your client will be eligible for first-time penalty abatement or not. And the next example that I'm going to give you here is 2020 may be eligible after filing compliance. So we see that return filed for 2018 is, we do not know, it's empty. So whether it was required to file or not. So if your client files 2018, they will be eligible to abate 1577.04. And also the filing status. We do not know what is the filing status in 2018. Was it single? Was it head of household or any other status? So if that status will be different, we will have to check the eligibility for the spouse. And in this case, we have a red footnote. FTA criteria must be met for both spouses if penalized tax year was filed under MFJ status. But you do not have POA or TIA for the spouse. And therefore, system cannot check the spouse's eligibility for FTA. So if you see that red footnote, that means the software cannot do anything. You need to obtain POA or 8821 for spouse and check. And once you do, you will be determining whether this period is eligible for filing compliance or not. So these are, and the last possible status that I couldn't find with my clients, but it will show like in red, not eligible due to spouse's non-compliance. So if we have power of attorney for the taxpayer and the spouse, the software is gonna pull the transcript for the spouse, check her eligibility, and let's say she had penalties in the 3-year prior periods, or she didn't file returns. So in that case, you will see a status not eligible due to spouse's non-compliance. Again, whenever you see other than eligible, look at the footnotes under the report and you will understand what's missing or how you can proceed to get this client eligible. Okay, next is polling question number 3. Let's launch another poll and you'll have a few seconds to complete it. Do you use FTA eligibility reports in Pitbull tax software? Yes or no? Oh, what's that? if you have 3 prior years not filed, once you file them, wouldn't that create new failure to file penalties, thereby negating the eligible penalty for the 4th year? Not necessarily. If they have a refund, there won't be any FTF or FTP penalties. Okay, perfect. 95%, 96% answered. Let's close the poll. Yes, 57% of you use it, 40% not, and 3% don't even know what's the FTA eligibility report in Pitbull Tax. I'm shocked. I thought a lot of you here are Pitbull Tax users, so you need to get on these reports because I'll tell you later, you can make money. Okay, let's stop sharing, close it, and let's move on. So, first-time abate is an administrative waiver that does not carry any oral statement authority, OSA threshold. What does it mean? That means that FTA abatement of any amount can be requested over the phone. The biggest amount of penalty over the phone known to me to date is $562,000 on a 30-minute calls done by Louise Hartford here. She is in attendance, and that is my hero, Louise. Thank you so much for sharing. So yes, Louise abated over $500,000 over the phone on a 30-minute call to the IRS. So there is no oral statement authority threshold. So if you call the IRS and they say, no, the penalty is too big, we cannot abate it over the phone, you need to send in request in writing. That's not correct. You can quote, and this is in the same FTA IRM where I took it from. So there is no oral statement authority threshold. Okay. Yes, it's the same 20.1.1.3.3. Whatever on the first slide, the IRM section. So FTA is an administrative waiver and does not carry any oral statement authority. Okay. Yes, if you have pushbacks that it has to be done in writing, quote that section and ask to talk to a supervisor. Okay. Next, penalty relief for certain taxpayers filing returns for taxable years 2019 and 2020. So the IRS issued a notice 2022-36 in August of last year. And basically under this notice, some taxpayers received automatic relief for failure to file penalties. And they didn't have to make any requests, and the penalties were abated. If taxpayers paid those penalties before that, then they received refund checks. So this time, when they updated IRM on FTA, they also introduced new section for administrative waivers for this penalty relief for 2019 and 2020 returns. So the waiver provides administrative relief from certain failure to file penalties, certain international information return penalties, and certain information return penalties. It is effective only for tax years 2019 and 2020. It is applied systemically to modules where applicable, and it doesn't require taxpayers' request to initiate abatement. The FTF penalty is waived for the returns filed on or before September 30th, 2022 for Form 1040 series, 1120 series, 1120S series returns, 1041s, 1065, 1066, 990T, and 990PF. So this returns will be eligible for automatic relief. For informational returns, it is waived for returns filed on or before September 30th, 2022 for Form 5471, 5472, 3520, and 3528. The administrative relief under this notice does not apply to any penalties not specifically provided for in Section 3 of the Notice 2022-36. Any return or form showing a penalty for fraudulent FTF penalty or fraud penalty under Internal Revenue Code 6663. Any penalty in accepted offer in compromise, and any penalty settled in a closing agreement or determined in the judicial proceedings. So automatic relief granted for 2019 and 2020 on FTF penalties will not disqualify FTA for other years if 2019 or 2020 fall into 3-year look-back period. So let's say you're trying to abate 2022 penalties, and 21, 20, and 19, both of 19 and 20 fall into the look-back period. And let's say they had FTF penalties, which IRS automatically abated based on this notice. So it will not disqualify you from because you have FTA waiver in the 3-year look-back period. However, there is an exception. If both FTF and FTP penalties were granted relief under FTA on or before September 30th, 2022, the FTA will not be disregarded. And this will disqualify you from getting FTA for, let's say, in my example, 2022. So, because FTA administrative waiver applies to the module and is not penalty specific. So you have to look at how the relief was granted. Was it automatic relief, and what penalties were abated under this notice? So now let's talk about penalty assessment, penalty abatement after refund statute expiration. Under Internal Revenue Code 6511, which is talking about limitations on credit or refund, the claim for credit or refund can be filed within 3 years from the time the return was filed, or 2 years from the time the tax was paid, whichever of such periods expires the later. And if no return was filed, within 2 years from the time the tax was paid. However, IRM section 25.6.1.10.2.7 states that if the taxpayer requests an adjustment that does not create an overpayment, in other words, refund, then Internal Revenue Code 6511 does not apply. This is considered a request for abatement of tax still owed. That means, can you get FTA for all the tax periods where refund statute of limitations has already expired? Big yes, you can. And that is the reason why a lot of tax professionals, including myself, when we pull transcripts from the year 2000 or 2001 to see if we can abate penalties for prior periods where refund statute expiration already gone. Let's say 2005, we can still do FTA, provided that your clients still have tax liabilities on other tax periods, and abated penalties can offset these tax liabilities. So for example, if your client owes for 2020 and you see eligibility for 2005 and 2010, you can call the IRS and say, I would like to request first-time penalty abatement for 2 periods, 2005 and 2010. They will tell you, oh, that year is already closed. Absolutely, I know that, sir, ma'am. I would like you to reopen those years, abate the penalties, and then close it back. So those penalties will be applied to 2020 liabilities, and they will reduce the current liability. So this is very, very important, and this is how you make money with first-time penalty abatement. This is a biggie. So if you never checked prior years, let's say the client comes to you with problems on 2015 through 2022, you get power of attorney for those periods. Big mistake. You want to check how you can help your client. Maybe they pay 10,000 in penalties and it can completely offset their current liability or reduce it significantly, because 10,000, it's still a lot of money. And this is how you need to check. So check all the periods. And when you request FTA eligibility, you must have power of attorney at least for the 3-year look-back period. So when you call PPS or ACS and say, I would like to request first-time penalty abatement for 2015, if you do not have power of attorney for 14, 13, and 12, they will not even talk to you. They'll say, sorry, you are not authorized. So absolutely get power of attorney before you call if you're trying to abate all the periods. So 3 prior years, you must have power of attorney. Okay. And the penalty abatement strategy. I recommend to not request FTA until maximum penalties have been accrued, because first-time abatement can be requested only once for the same tax period. You can do it multiple times in taxpayer's lifetime, but for the same period, you can do only once for failure to file and failure to deposit penalties. Requesting it too early will not get the most tax benefit to the taxpayer. So again, there's exception. You can request second FTA on the same period for failure to pay penalties once tax is paid in full. And this is a quote for the IRM section 20.1.1.3.3.2.1.14. So item number 14 says exactly this. So you can do a second FTA for the same period for FTP penalties. So before, remember, we had a compliance criterion before March 29 that the tax must be either paid in full or arranged to pay. Basically, installment agreement should have been established. By the way, this compliance criterion is gone. You do not need to have installment agreement in place to request FTA, and you absolutely do not have to pay that tax in full to get FTA. So, a lot of people, they would before they would establish installment agreement, wait until 2-3 payments would post, and then they will call the IRS and say, I would like to get first-time penalty abatement because I saw it in Pitbull tax report that this period is eligible for FTA. Cool, right? Well, FTF penalty is maxed out in 5 months, so that's not a problem. But FTP penalty is maxed out in 50 months. So in that case, if they do it too early, they will not be able to get majority, right, of penalty abated. Some people believe that you can't, but in case, yes, you can do a double FTA request on the same tax period only for FTP penalties. So yes, depending on how much is FTF penalty, in order not to wait for 50 months, you can do one FTA for FTF and FTP, and 50 months down the road, once tax is paid in full under installment agreement, you can call and request again FTA on failure to pay penalties. You can do it twice. Just for your information, I posted here, FTF penalties are 5% per month, maximum 25%. And FTP penalties are between 0.25 to 0.5%, also maximum 25%. And if both FTF and FTP penalty apply, maximum goes to 47.5%. So you need to figure out whether the penalties were maxed out. Not only assessed, accrual work too. So if they've been accrued for the last 50 months, but they haven't been assessed yet, it's fine. They can be FT8. Let's launch the last polling question for today. Can you get FTA on tax period with expired RSET? Yes, no, I have no idea what is RSET. Okay, 91% participated. Let's move. We have only a few minutes left, and then you'll go about your day. So 92% says yes, 6% no, and 2%, I have no idea what is RSET. RSET stands for Refund Statute Expiration Date. And okay, let's move on. And how you can request FTA waiver. You can call PPS at this number, or if the account is already in collections, you can call ACS number and say just that. I would like to request first-time penalty abatement for 2020, for example, for this client. They'll check if you have power of attorney, and they'll say, okay, let us run it through RCA. That's their program, Reasonable Cause Assistant, and they will come back to you with yay or nay answer. I do not suggest calling penalty abatement hotline at this number. I know the wait is very slow, very low, but this hotline was created for taxpayers, not for tax professionals. And in my experience, not very knowledgeable assisters attend to this line. And sometimes I got negative decisions when PPS is usually works much better. And you can also mail Form 843, or you can mail just a letter. We have FTA response letter in Pitbull Tax software under letters. So you just check the boxes, what you're trying to do for which year, and that's it. The software will spit out the ready to mail a letter, and off you go. My personal recommendation, do it over the phone. It's much faster. The taxpayer and you as a representative will receive a decision in 2-3 weeks in the mail. Well, you'll know the decision right there over the phone. And that's much faster than waiting for the decision through mail. I don't like mailing. And by the way, Form 843, if you request it, if you're requesting multiple periods, it works only for one period at a time. And remember, under Circular 230, paragraph 10.27b3, you can charge contingent fee for services rendered in connection with a claim for credit or refund filed solely in connection with a determination of statutory interest or penalties assessed by the IRS. And that includes first-time penalty abatement. Absolutely, you can charge a contingent fee. What is contingent fee? When it depends on the outcome. If you abated $10,000 and you charge certain percentage, then that's how much you're gonna receive for this service. Trust me, the service is very, very simple. It only takes one call to the IRS and saying one sentence. I would like to request first-time penalty abatement on a year. And that's it. They will do the rest. You just sit and sip your coffee over the phone while waiting for them to run RCA. So that is a lot. Like percentage, it depends. Remember, Circular 230 prohibits us to charge unconscionable fee. But again, there is no definition of unconscionable fee. In our practice, we charge 15%, minimum $300 for penalty abatement under FTA. And if, let's say, it's the penalty is $3,000 and we charge 15%, so $450, and we do it maybe in half hour, so hourly rate is $900, not too shabby, right? And the more the penalty, the better. Remember, Louise abated over $500,000 over the phone. Guess how much he charged? I won't tell you. So contingent fee, that's how you make money with first-time abatement. And how do you find who is eligible? Well, we have transcript dashboard section in your software accounts called first-time penalty abatement eligibility. And it shows all the clients that have eligibility. They may be eligible after filing compliance. They may be eligible if you check if prior penalties were not FTA'd. But you will have a list of all your clients with tax period, with compliance history, whether return was filed or not, failure to file penalties, failure to pay penalties, failure to deposit, eligibility status, and potential abatement from the largest amount to the lowest. So you do not need to do anything else. You just need to go to transcript dashboard, go to your IRS transcript delivery, and select a page called transcript dashboard. Look at this section. It's section number 3 from the top. And here you are. This is how you make money. So find out, for example, eligible, record number 3 here, 5,203. What you need to do? Just send engagement letter to your client, maybe quick email saying, listen, I can reduce your tax debt by 5,200. Do you want to do it? Yes or no? I'll charge 15% on the abatement. And by the way, when you quote your fee, do not forget that on top of the penalties, the IRS will abate interest on those penalties. So don't quote exact amount in your engagement letters. Just say percentage and minimum amount if you want to. So once the penalty and interest were abated, you calculate your fee. So this is a goldmine for you. If you haven't seen this section yet, or you do not have IRS transcript delivery in your account, you owe it to yourself to get it, because listen, this is where the money is. And you do not have to do anything. You do not have to check every single report package for every single client. It's all summarized to you and presented. Easy to read format. You only have to request transcript. That's it. Or you can update your entire transcript dashboard by clicking one button in the first section. That's called Update All. That's it. This is how you make money with FTA. And for those of you who attended live today, I prepared some special offers. So for new and returning customers, you can buy Pitbull Tax Software single user annual license with 3 most popular add-ons: IRS transcript delivery, case management and billing, and scenario simulator for just $1,500 today and tomorrow only. And it's only available for live attendees. So if you're watching recording tomorrow, this offer will not be applicable to you. This is a benefit of attending live. And if you're existing customer, I didn't forget about you too. So for existing customers, if you renew your annual license early, today or tomorrow, you will get 2 extra months added to your license term. It's valid only for live webinar attendees and only if renewal is processed on May 30th or May 31st. Prior renewals will not be adjusted, so please do not call us and say, well, I renewed in April. Can you adjust my renewal? No, we cannot. It's only for people who renew early. So any questions? And I have posted here our contact information, so you can contact Will, Justin, or other salespeople. These are the phone numbers, and these are the email addresses, how to get it. I know I ran 5 minutes past. Not sure if all the questions were answered. Will, Justin, do we have any interesting that we can cover live quickly?
Yeah, there's a few more questions here, like,
Okay.
yeah, are failure to deposit penalties related to estimated taxes or payroll taxes?
Failure to deposit penalties are related to payroll taxes, 941 series.
What is Form 5471?
5471, it's information return for U.S. taxpayer in relation to foreign tax corporations.
Would you also cover 3520 penalties?
3520 penalties are not subject to FTA. There was a relief under IRS notice issued last August if for 2019 and 2020 only. And if return was filed before September 30th, 2022, the 3520, the foreign tax gift, foreign gifts, they can be FTA'd, otherwise not. Okay.
Can FTA be used for FPF on grantor trust form 1041?
No.
And one apply for FTA for more than one time for one client in the client's lifetime?
Say it again.
Can one apply for FTA for more than one time for one client in a client's lifetime?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Basically, you can do it every fourth year if other criteria are met. Yes, multiple times you can do.
Can you choose a different year to have the penalty abated? Say they have a late filing penalty for 1,000 on 2020, but 5,000 on 2021. Can you request the abatement for 2021 and pay the 2020?
No, it cannot be done. So 3 prior periods must be clear of penalties. Can you go back on specials? Okay, with the 3 add-ons. Okay, this is a special for new and returning customers. 1,500, the regular price is 1,820. There is no coupons, so in order to get these offers, you need to call in. For existing customers, you don't need to call in. You can just renew today or tomorrow, and we will check who renewed. And if you attended live, we have records, then we'll extend your term for another 2 months. Any other questions, Will?
Technically, should FTA abate only assessed penalties or also assess plus accrued?
They will abate assessed and accrued penalties up to the moment of you calling or sending request. Accruals also.
What happens for FTA if the IRS files for TP?
In that case, it's not qualified if SFR is filed. So the taxpayer did not file returns. And that's one of the criteria that must be met.
Yeah, there's a lot of good questions on here.
Okay.
A lot of 50 something.
Okay. Did we answer all of them or no?
There's a dozen, dozens more.
Okay.
That I see.
I can say more if you read me the questions.
Let's see. Is there a code section for the statute of limitation problem? I've had several agents tell me this. I assumed it was new agents.
Yes. If you're trying to abate all the periods and they tell you, no, we cannot do it, ask for the supervisor, call back. Sometimes, like I do not want to waste time. And if I see that it's a new assister that been just hired and they don't know the rules, I'll hang up and call back again. Or if like 2 or 3 in a row will tell me the same thing, I will ask to speak to a supervisor and say, well, read the IRM.
I know there was a couple people going back and forth on if it was 15 months or 50 months.
The failure to pay penalty, the maximum, because it's 0.5% per month, so the max will be in 50 months.
Okay.
50. Well, sometimes the penalty is reduced to 0.25 months, 0.25%. So the max will be in 100 months.
What if a taxpayer is compliant up until 2022 now, but they have from before they were compliant the 3 years before, so they're technically eligible, they can still file as long as they filed their extension?
That is no longer a criterion. I discussed it. The new criteria is only when the 3 prior periods are filed. You do not have to be in payment compliance. So you do not need to establish installment agreement in order to get FTA. So
No, I mean, if they don't have current filing compliance for this year.
It doesn't matter. So if they didn't file this year, but they're trying to do FTA on 2020, for example, they still can do it. So only 3 prior years. Remember, prior years. Don't look at the current compliance. Okay. Any more questions?
I don't think this one was. Does FTA also apply to 1120s and 1065s?
Absolutely.
One person did ask with contingency fees, how would you charge for that? Like, would that be upfront or upon result?
Good question. It depends. Like if, for example, you have your regular client and you prepare returns for them and you see that they're eligible for FTA. I would usually trust and say if I know that their payment is usually post timely, I would say I will do it. If I am successful, you'll pay me the fee. If not, you will not pay. But for new clients who just showed up and I see that we can abate, let's say, $10,000, I will take up front and I say in our engagement letter, if we're not successful, we'll return you the fee. We won't charge you anything. And that's usually works. And by the way, how you find eligibility? I personally run all our tax prep clients in Pitbull Tax. So Pitbull Tax software does not only hold people with IRS problems. We enter all our tax prep clients in Pitbull Tax. And first of all, we use our client portal for sharing documents. And second of all, we obtain 8821s on all our clients. In bulk, by the way, you can do it in bulk. It's very simple. View our demos, our presentations on how to prepare 8821s in bulk, or call our customer service and they'll explain to you how to do it in a few minutes. And file 8821s for everybody. And then you will see eligibility for first-time penalty abatement. So basically, you already have clients. For those of you who prepare returns for 1,000, 2,000 people, trust me, your first-time penalty abatement eligibility section on transcript dashboard will be huge. And that's where you make money. Okay. Any other questions? No?
We got all the main ones.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. Again, remember, special offer runs only for today and tomorrow. No extensions. It's been a pleasure to be here and hope you learned a thing or two. Thank you so much. Until next time. Bye-bye.